we get so many moments to strengthen us throughout our lives. And I think a lot of times as parents, we want to be cocoon cutters. We want to make it easier. We want to open that and we want to cut the cocoon and what we end up doing is we don't allow our kids to strengthen themselves to be able to fly one day. And I think that simple story is huge. And I think about it a lot. I got an 11-year-old at home. I remember when he was first going to preschool, and we need winter jackets up here in Wisconsin. And he's in our mud room, and he's struggling trying to zip up his jacket. And what do I want to do? I just want to go and zip it up for him because he's crying, he's frustrated. But in the back of my head, I'm like, don't be a cocoon cutter. Otherwise, he's going to be that 7th grader that can't zip up his jacket.
Welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast with your hosts, Idea Monkey Mike Maddock and ringleader John Tobin. We're two founders, a serial entrepreneur and $1 billion operator, to talk to leaders about how, when, and why they made their most pivotal decisions in life. Join us as we share wisdom, mistakes, and a few laughs learning from the brightest minds in business today. Okay, so lucky us, today we have Coach Steve Jones as a guest. I was talking to a good friend a few weeks ago about folks that he'd hired to help motivate his senior leaders to be better senior leaders. And he goes, "Oh yeah, you've met Steve, right?" And I said, "Who's that?" He goes, "Oh my God, you got to meet Coach Jones." So as a hint of what we're going to talk about, the current record for wins in the United States in high school is 64 wins in a row right now. It's a school called Marion Local in Ohio. Steve, you managed to get to 70 when you were a high school coach, which is unbelievable up in Wisconsin. You've written a book. The book is, what's the book called again, Steve? I haven't, I want to dig. It's called, go ahead.
The Twin Thieves, how great
The,
leaders build great teams. Yep. And the
the
Twin
Twin
Thieves are the fear
Thieves.
of failure and the fear of judgment.
And you sent me one. It hasn't arrived yet. I can't wait to read it. I've heard good things about it. So thank you for that. And you're currently a partner in a company that helps executives lead better. And you're doing a fair amount of speaking all over the world. So I've really looked forward to, as a dad and as a business leader, having this conversation. So welcome to Your Seat at the Table.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about the conversation today.
Okay. So tell us your story. I mean, how did you wind up? Where did you grow up? How did you wind up coaching? How did you wind up being such a great coach?
Yeah. So I grew up in Wisconsin. I was the youngest of 5, and I grew up with a dad who really wasn't around. So I had a lot of great role models step into my life. A 5th grade teacher that made a huge impact, coaches that made a huge impact. And I went on to play some college football, coached a little college football for a little bit, but really in my heart, I wanted to try to make a positive impact the way that those individuals made a positive impact on me. So I was in education for 20 years. I taught 1st grade, I taught 4th grade, I taught 5th grade, I taught high school. I joke that the only thing I didn't touch was middle school because I'm not a psychopath, right? And the last, I think it was ended up being 13 years of my career. I had this unique opportunity to teach and develop 3 separate leadership courses at our high school. And they all kind of organically grew. So that was really my life for 13, 14 years. I got to dive deep into leadership, read lots of books and listen to podcasts and watch TED Talks. But then most importantly, learn alongside and from our young leaders and learn about what they were excited about and what got them going, what they were interested in, but also what held them back and what they were fearful of. And then I had this really unique opportunity to take these ideas and concepts and principles and tools and frameworks and see if they actually worked in a highly competitive, unpredictable situation like the football field. Because I just really think that leadership's a lot easier to read about or talk about than it is to do. So I got to see if it actually worked or if it just sounded good. And if it didn't work, we went back and revamped it. So it was that kind of constant cycle of learning, teaching. And as you guys know, when you teach and you mentor and you coach, you learn a lot through that process, implementing, reflecting, and refining. So I ended up doing that, and we experienced some success. So and I use that intentionally, it was not a me thing, it was a we thing. Amazing coaching staff and players and families and community. We experienced, some success. So mentioned the 70-game win streak. Over the course of 11 years, we won 129 and lost 9.
Wow.
And there's some businesses that started hearing about what we were doing as far as leadership development, cultural growth, mindset training. And they asked me to start coming in and speaking to their businesses. really loved that, was kind of doing it when I could in the summer, after school, things like that. And then COVID hit, and I always said I didn't have enough time to write a book. That excuse got taken away from me. My now business partner, co-author Lucas Jade, and I wrote the Twin Thieves over the course of a year, and self-published it on Amazon. Ended up becoming an Amazon bestseller, and it hit a tipping point then when getting contacted quite a bit about wanting to work with businesses and business leaders. So made a decision to take a leap and leave education, and now I've been doing this for about 3.5 years.
Okay, so I
Steve,
have a
just Mike, if you don't mind, like just going back to kind of the original curriculum and leadership program that you were teaching, did you create the material or was it created and then you enhanced it? Or maybe just talk a little bit about what inspired you even to do it. Were you just pushed into it? How did that begin at the school?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, John. So I was a health teacher at the high school, and then I was getting my master's degree in educational leadership. And I went through a great program where you kind of had a choice. So you could write kind of a thesis, or you could do a project. And obviously, I
Mm,
took the project end, and I chose leadership and character education to be implemented into our health curriculum because I really felt like at the root decisions came from the type of person you are, the type of leader you are, and started to embed that. And my principal approached me and said, "Hey, what do you think about just taking on a leadership class?" He goes, "Next year I can give you two, and then we'll see what happens." Well, two turned into four, turned into eight, turned into
wow.
how many? And then they wanted leadership two and leadership three. So to ask your specifically the question, it was a little bit of the research that I did in my master's degree, and then it was a lot of iterating, learning from our kids. And as you guys know, and the work that you guys do, there is so many amazing resources out there, and
Mm,
trying to figure out what made sense the most, what was simple enough, not easy, but simple enough to comprehend. And really kind of continuing to iterate to figure out what resonated the most and what made the most sense. So was able to develop myself along with some help throughout those years of leadership one all the way up to leadership three.
so this is going to demonstrate how differently John and I think about things. I you brushed over something that seemed fundamental to the whole story. My dad wasn't around much,
Mhm.
and yet you became this incredible leader.
mm,
And I just never met a person who's a man who's running an organization who hasn't some kind of complexity with their father that is fundamental to what drove them to be who they are today. Can you talk? I mean, this is a deeply personal question, but
Mhm.
what happened there? I mean, did you get into this line of work because you were trying to fill those gaps, or like who filled that gap for you with your dad not being around much? That blows my mind that
Yeah.
you wind up leading hundreds and hundreds of young men after from a place where you know your dad wasn't around much. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was an oops baby. I was kind of a big oops. So there was a huge age gap, and I had two older brothers that were huge role models and father figures to me growing up. So very lucky to have them in my life. But as they grew older and off at college, I really gravitated, as I said, to teachers and coaches. And there was a
mm,
really pivotal time. I'm a believer in moments. Steve
yeah.
Jobs talked about you can never connect the dots looking forward. You only connect the dots looking back. And there was a moment where, my mom finally mustered up enough courage to leave and get a divorce. My dad was an alcoholic. And so I had started a new school and new neighborhood and all this other stuff. And I landed this teacher who was the head hockey coach at our high school. His name was Mr. Stoskov. Like, that's a killer name, right?
Yeah,
And at the
for a
time, I mean,
hockey
he was,
coach,
It does
yeah.
sound like a
Staskov.
hockey kid. Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I mean, he was young, he was single, like he had a boat, he had a dog, like he was the hockey coach. In my mind, he was like it. And I remember the first week of school, I forgot my lunch. I didn't want to say anything because my mom just got a new job, and I didn't want him to think I was irresponsible. So I'm sitting there, and I'm surrounded by kids. They're not talking to me because I'm still the new kid, and they're all eating except for me because I forgot my lunch. And I remember looking down at those fake wooden lunch tables we had in elementary school, thinking my life could not get any worse. Of all the things that are going on in my personal life, on top of it, I don't have any friends, I don't have anything to eat, and I look up, and then through those big gym doors in the back, because we had our gymnasium also doubles as our cafeteria, entered Mr. Stoskov. It was one of those,
Bum, ba, bum,
moments,
bum, ba,
and he's
bum,
got a
bum.
he's got a bag of Hardee's, the fast food restaurant, and a big soda from Hardee's. And he makes eye contact with me, and he weaves his way, and he places the Hardee's and the soda in front of me, and he looks down, and he slaps him on my back, and all he says is just, "Enjoy your lunch." And then he just walked out.
Wow.
And, like, he, along with other people, like, literally changed the trajectory of my life,
Yeah.
in that moment, and I thought it was really interesting because I don't think he really had a lot of recollection of that moment. He knows now, but, like, it wasn't a big deal to him, but it was a huge deal to me, and I said to myself, like, I wanna make a difference like that guy."
Hmm.
Yeah. And
And,
I can feel you
like,
getting emotional about it now, like
yeah,
this many years later.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was huge, because of all the things I needed in my life, I needed an adult male to care about me,
Wow.
and he showed up. And, like, that's why I went into elementary education to start, and that's one of the reasons I went into coaching. Now, again, it wasn't just that moment, but, he was a huge part of my journey, along with a lot of other, male and female teachers and things like that. But really, you know, I needed somebody in my life, and somebody arrived. And then when I wanted to make a decision on what I wanted to do, coaching college football or high school and teaching, I went back to, I want to have a opportunity to make a difference like that guy does.
When did you get a chance to tell him that story? Because it's so rarely do you get to go back to people and say, you really changed my life and here's how. Do you remember when you told him that?
I think when I was still student teaching, I got to student teach in the same school he was
Oh,
at.
that's
Like,
cool.
I think I like massaged my way into that, Mike. Like, just letting him know, like, the impact he had.
Hmm.
And then, I don't know if he ever really heard that story until I was doing a presentation in a school district, and they surprised me by bringing him in.
Oh, it's
Wow.
great.
And he had his wife and his son.
Oh
His
my God.
son's now a teacher, and
Wow.
he's sitting in the auditorium in the school, and I'm up on stage, like, trying to get through the story. And, obviously, he came up to me afterwards, and I'm like, "Hey, like, that was my recollection of that story. Am I right on this?" And he's like, "Yeah, like, now that you bring
Steve,
it up, I."
I was
That's
asked to
amazing.
speak at our school district in Chicago maybe 10 years ago, and it was such an honor. The whole school district, and I pointed out a teacher in the audience, said, "Could you stand up for a second?" And I told her a story I'd heard from my son about how she had changed his life when he was in fifth grade. I go, "I just want to give you that gift because you completely changed his life by saying one thing to him, and I know about it."
Huh.
What a wonderful gift. So okay, so you're now let's move to high school. So now you're coaching. I'm just really curious about, like, you learned a lot working with young men that I'm sure you apply every day in leadership. We'll talk about parenting here eventually, but is it like, here's a question. Which breaks first, discipline or humility? Like, were you more about, was it more for you about culture, or was it about hard work? Like, what, if you had to boil down what the key to your success was in one word, what would it be?
Hmm.
Can I use the word "and"? Can I can I can I use
Go ahead.
culture
Just
and discipline? And
a
here's why I
culture
say
of
that.
discipline.
Yeah. So, you know, why is culture? So, if I had to pick one, it would be culture. But I think there's so many layers to that. So, why is culture important? I think words matter. So, to me, the purpose of culture is to create an environment that drives consistent winning behaviors. A lot of people, when they hear that word culture, they think about being able to wear jeans or having donuts on Friday, which are all great things. But the whole purpose of culture is to create this environment that drives the behaviors that help you win. Right. And you can do that a lot of different ways. We tried to create a loving culture. So one of our values was family, and family was forget about me. I love you. And love was really a foundational part of our program. But love also meant that we worked really hard and we were disciplined because we didn't want to let each other down. We'd use this
Yeah.
quote all the time that a true soldier doesn't fight because they hate what's in front of them. A true soldier fights because they love what's beside them. And
Hmm.
our kids fought so hard because they loved each other. They worked so hard because they didn't want to let each other down. So I know you're asking me for one, but I think there's a lot of layers to that. And
Yeah.
then I think the best cultures are not top down, they're bottom up. And one of the biggest things we did is we systematically developed leaders who owned the culture from the bottom up. It wasn't driven by me, it was driven by the players.
Hmm.
But you
Can you
couldn't
can you
recruit your players. I mean, you
Mhm.
had to deal with that's the difference. Like I hear a lot of coaches say, I recruit a certain type of player that's going to do really well in our culture. So how do you motivate young kids that you have no control of who you're dealing with? Like,
Mhm.
did you have a trick? Our coach, uh, Glenbard West, I heard this story years ago where some kid went into Subway and was bullying another kid. The coach found out about it, so the whole team ran. He ran him to the ground, saying, "Hey, we're gonna be a team that takes care of each other. That's not how we behave. So someone on this team misbehave, so we're all gonna run." Did you have any hacks like that, or to bring everybody along?
Yeah, I think the secret is there is no secret. I really do. I think
Yeah.
it's about time. One way to spell love is time, and I think
Mhm.
there's three ways to really build connection. I think in business and sports, it doesn't matter. One is through our stories, right? Our stories connect us as human beings. One is through service, right? So we tried to serve together. We did a camp free of charge for kids with special needs every single
Yeah.
year. Like I'd get emotional on those camps watching our kids interact, and it was some of the highlights of their career was working that camp, and it
Yeah.
also brought our kids together. And then through struggle, and I think whether it's families, whether it's organizations, whether it's teams in sports, when you struggle together, right, you create a bond like on no other. It goes back to the Navy SEALs and everything else. So really, like if I was going to put a structure or framework, how we built that connected culture were through all three of those S's.
Yeah.
Hey,
Awesome.
Steve,
Right.
without maybe you don't have to disclose names or anything, but could you share a couple stories about like a few kids that either were rough around the edges, and by the time they graduated, you saw tremendous growth, or they were just great, an individual leader, or just give us some stories about different kids that like still stick with you, that like I know that person benefited from this, and maybe dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. There's a lot, John, and
Yeah.
if I can anchor, if you're all right, if I can anchor in a quick story, that was a foundation. When I first got the job, I introduced this mantra called "Water It," and it comes from the "Water the Bamboo" story. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a true story about the giant bamboo. The giant bamboo farmer will go down the field, he'll bury that seed underneath the soil, and he'll water that seed morning and night, morning and night. And 30
Mm.
days will pass, 60 days will pass, 90 days will pass, whole year will pass, and he won't see anything. In the second year, same thing, morning and night, 2 whole years, still nothing. Third year, people are coming up to him saying, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? There's nothing there. Move on, do something else." But not the bamboo farmer. Patient, he's persistent, he's consistent, he continues to water the bamboo. Third year, still nothing. But in the fourth year, the giant bamboo will explode through the soil and grow 90 feet in 60 days.
Huh.
And that story was our mantra. Water it every single day, water the bamboo. And I think we live in a very instant gratification, microwavable society where we want results right away. But I don't think success is always microwavable. I know relationships certainly are. So when you ask that question, John, about those stories, I am immediately go to the water the bamboo kids. Right. There was a quarterback in our program. He was a junior playing JV football, which is not usually a good sign.
Yeah.
And he ended up becoming a senior, and he could barely at the beginning of like summer like complete a 5-yard pass. That kid did so much to improve. Like he would ask for the practice scripts after practice so he could study it. He'd spend extra time before and after practice. He did all these little things. He ended up becoming the number one quarterback in the entire state of Wisconsin his senior year. Now, in a lot of other sports, like where you cut and all this other stuff, like he never would have got the chance. But that kid watered the bamboo, and he not only changed as a player, but John, you should have saw him change as a person. The way he carried himself, the way he led, his
Hmm.
confidence. And I think that journey changed his life way after football. Like he's a different person because he saw that, hey, if I continue to water the bamboo, like it, it'll I can't control the results, but I can control what I do in the process.
Mm.
There's other individuals that changed as people. As you said, we had some people in our program that grew up in some rough homes, and we tried to be those father figures to those individuals. And I really think if they weren't a part of, our program, I don't know what path they would have taken. But a lot of times, John, you get that feedback long after they graduate.
Yeah.
You get the text message, you get the invite to the wedding, you get this changed. And coach, I didn't always understand it at the time, but now I understand. So those are the really cool moments for me now that they're married and have kids and they understand it.
I love
And they're
that.
telling their own kids the water the bamboo story now.
How many coaches do you have in your lineage so far
Hmm.
that you know of? How many of your kids are
Oof,
coaching yet? Because they're
that's a
gonna.
great question. I'd have to go back and count, but there's definitely some guys that are out coaching in college football and their own kids now all over, and it's neat to see. And I
My
think it's always neat to see it, and we need more educators today, more than ever, in my opinion. So it's really cool to see some of these kids that um, that are going into education, want to give back. I was just at a had a benefit. We had a former player, his junior year, he ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. He was all first team all conference center as a junior, and he ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. And it ended up coming back. And I got to go to a local benefit for him and talk to him. And he's going to become a teacher. He's not giving up on that.
That's awesome.
And those types of things are pretty cool.
My
I,
brother-in-law is a wrestling coach. He was a high school, then college wrestling coach for 25 years. His name is Ralph McCausland, and he is in the Hall of Fame. And I've gone to see uh, a whole bunch of awards that he's gotten that he didn't want. But what sticks with me are the kids that he coached that are now men who are coaches, and their students who are now coaches. Like there are literally dozens and dozens of high school and college coaches that were coached by him. And they're all impacting lives and the
Mhm.
stories. And I just look at Ralph and go, my God, your legacy is just like, it's just unbelievable the impact he's been able to have as a coach. It gives me chills thinking about it. Was it hard for you to leave coaching?
It was probably the hardest decision of my life. Not the hardest thing I've ever been through, but making a decision, it was really hard because I wasn't unhappy. Like I had a great setup. I got to teach leadership. I got to impact kids. I got to coach football. So I wasn't like running from something. But one thing I always talk to our kids about is if you want to take a positive risk in your life, you can't allow the twin thieves of fear of failure, fear of judgment to hold you back. And I was drawn to this and I was kind of at this point of, okay, well, you say these things, it's easy to say. Now you get confronted with a really tough decision. Are you going to live it out? So that was one thing I really thought about, but it was tough because I do miss the kids. I miss those relationships. But I was in it for 20 years and I thought, it might be an opportunity to go impact, some different people.
Yeah, talk about the book a little bit. So the Twin
yeah.
Thieves, you just gave it to us, and John and I are both parents, and I see young people like stuck. They're just stuck because it feels like they don't know what they should be doing. They're afraid that if they do something wrong, they're not going to get ahead. Can you talk about the insights of the book and how they may
Mhm.
apply to coaching, parenting,
I think
leadership?
the other thing, Mike, is that we both done a lot of like leadership development stuff, either ourselves or our teams. And so, yeah, I'm really curious, kind of the concepts and the principles behind the book. And if also, if did they come from the curriculum that you had, or did they germinate maybe just through your experiences? So yeah, sorry to cut you off, but I would love to hear about the book.
Yeah. So in our work now, and even when I was teaching leadership, we don't want to just focus on the fruit. We want to get to the root. And that's what we discovered was one of the biggest, if not the biggest inhibitors for young leaders, but also adults. I just did a 3-hour workshop yesterday and we did an anonymous survey of what holds you back from being the best version you can be.
Mm,
And time again, it came back fear of failure, fear of judgment. It might look a little bit different, fear of letting other people down, imposter
yeah.
syndrome. You guys know it all, but
Mm.
I really think unless you unlock what is really holding people back, you can give them all the tools in the world, but they're just not going to use them because they're fearful of, coming up short or what other people think or holding other people accountable, whatever it is. So where originated was, I used to shape my classroom like a circle. I got rid of all the desks. We just had chairs. We had a circle, and there's a lot of research around circles and seeing each other, and it was great. And we every day we had an opening circle question where every kid had the opportunity as we went around the circle to give their input, share an experience, create a connection, discussion. And one prompt every year was, or every class was, what is the biggest thing that holds you back from being the best version of yourself, being the best leader you can be? And I had them all write it down on a piece of paper anonymously. They all had that same color pen, and then they crumpled it up and threw it in the middle of the room. And then I mixed them up and I had them go grab one, right? And they all took one back and they read it to themselves, and then they read it out loud, and we went around the circle. And 90+% every single class came back to one or two of those thieves or both. So it either was fear of failure or fear of judgment. Time and time. It was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, time and time. So then we started talking about it and started, trying to give them tools on how to rise above it and perspective around it and
Mm.
experiences around it. And then I started getting to know my current business partner who is doing, unbelievable executive training and executive coaching throughout the country. He's been coaching the coach of the LA Dodgers, the manager of the LA Dodgers, Dave Roberts. He's been coaching him for 7, 8 years and all these times. And then we started talking. I told him that story. He's like, you know what? Those are the two things that hold my clients back the most too. And, everything in psychology says if you can name it, you can tame it.
Mm.
And all we're trying to do is just put a name to it and make it visible. It's impossible to beat an invisible opponent, right? And it really resonates with people. So we call them twins because a lot of times people say they're scared of failure, but the more questions you ask, you realize maybe they're not even really scared of the failure itself. They're more worried about what happens afterwards, the judgment that happens afterwards. So fear of failure, fear of judgment can get mixed up kind of like twins, and they can rob us. So I'd like to get your input. When you think about the fear of failure and the fear of judgment, what could those two things potentially rob us of? What pops in your head?
Well,
I-
Hmm.
taking chances and trying to go for something that, perhaps you haven't done before.
Hmm.
Um,
yeah. And I think like rapid prototyping, just like experimenting. Just, well, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. That hurt. That hurt. That hurt. Whoa, that felt pretty good. Like
mm,
that's how life is supposed to, I think,
Hmm.
supposed to teach you what you're good at. But if you're stuck and not moving forward, you don't get any of that feedback. You're just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
So, we run into a company that has innovation as one of their core values, yet they're driven by fear. Like innovate, but don't screw up, right? It just
yeah.
doesn't work. So, I could go on and on about how it's robbing people of joy, relationships, success in their life. Like, I think they're the biggest thieves in America. I really do. I think they hold people back the most. And then when you look at kids specifically, as simple as raising their hand in class. Well, when you raise your hand in class, what happens? Well, everybody looks at you. And
mm,
then you could say something wrong, and then everybody's going to laugh at you. And then with society today, with social media, when we were all growing up, like you made a mistake, people forgot about it. But now
mm,
it might be recorded and it might be out there forever and it might be spread to thousands instead of the 30 people in the classroom. So there's a whole new level of it.
mm,
And I just think like when you literally get to the root of what's holding a lot of people back, it is those two things. Now, I'm
mm,
not saying you can't rise above it, but a lot of people think too that they go away once you hit a certain level. Once I hit this amount of revenue, or once I become a CEO, or once I graduate from high school, or once I become the captain of the team. But if you don't rise above it, right, they don't go away, they can amplify. So it got go back to your original question, John. It was rooted in our classroom through conversations and discussions and anonymous input. And then when I started having conversations, it wasn't just kids. It was
mm.
high end leaders too.
Does it
So
help
what is
for,
so what are the
go ahead.
techniques that you kind of maybe talk about to rise above it or to get over it, and is it just about creating the space for people to fail, creating the space for people to get over their fears, or maybe talk a little bit about almost the remedy in a way?
Yeah. Well, one, you talked about like creating an environment. So I do think connected teams are powerful teams. I know you guys have probably
Mm.
done a lot of work around psychological safety and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And when people hear psychological safety, they might think about rainbows and butterflies. But really, the big thing about psychological safety is you can take well-earned risks without the fear of getting kicked out of the tribe. You can have difficult conversations. You can speak your mind, right? So I think creating an environment, right? Whether that was in my classroom, on the football field, in the boardroom, whatever it is, how do we create this environment where people can take those well-earned risks, that they can iterate, as Mike was talking about, that they can raise their hand, that they can challenge, right? Because that will help. Because the number one thing is it is rooted in our brains. Like our brains, I like simple, and we got a lot of probably smart people listening to this, but at its root, our job of our brain is to simply keep us alive. That's priority number one.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to primitive times, like cavemen, cavewomen. If you got judged or you failed real bad, what might happen in caveman times? We got kicked out of the tribe. If you got kicked out of the tribe, what happened? Well, you died. So blending in, being average was actually a survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Now we don't have to worry about today getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, but it's still rooted in us of like, hey, don't get kicked out of the tribe. But if you can create a tribe that's going to embrace you no matter what, you're more likely to rise above it. And then on an individual basis, not to spend too much time on this, but I think we all have an inner critic, right? And we call it our little person voice, right? That's our insecure, ego driven voice. And I don't think enough people simply question their thoughts. We can't control our thoughts. Some people think we can. We can control how we respond to them. And one way we can respond to our thoughts is to question them. So a lot of people, when they talk to themselves, because we talk to ourselves the most of the day, it's not very positive. And the research that we have found, a lot of it is around like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not old enough, you're not young enough, you're not experienced enough. Like it tells you things, right? And then if I can give you one tool, I don't think it's a remedy, but it's a tool. Just simply ask yourself, is that 100% true?
Mm.
Because most times it's not. Like if I fail, everybody's going to laugh at me and they're not going to stop talking about me. And like, is that 100% true? No, we think it might be, but it's not. And then ask yourself, like, how do you show up in the absence of those thoughts? And then my last question would be in that process is what would your best coach say to you? Because a lot of times we're our worst critics. So to turn into your best coach in those times where the twin thieves get really, really loud, how would your best coach talk to you in that moment?
Hmm.
Yeah, I love
Is
that.
that
I
helpful?
think it
Yeah.
is. I've been
Yeah.
told to think about the person that loves you more than anyone else in the world. What would they be saying to you right now? So similar kind of,
Absolutely.
Um, do you have any thoughts about like this is kind of bridging the gap between coaching and parenting, I guess. Um, and before we got on and started recording, we were talking about how everybody does the best they can and then hopes for the best when it comes to parenting. When does protection become enabling? Like when does like protecting a kid from getting hurt become enabling, like them not experimenting or trying? Do you have any thoughts on that? Like tough love kind of coaching?
Mhm. Yeah. Can I get rooted in another quick story?
I love
So
stories. Yeah.
yeah, and I would use this story in every parent meeting before the season starts. Okay,
Let's
and
do it.
there's an old man. He's sitting in his garden. He's retired. He's having a cup of coffee on a beautiful summer morning, and he looks down and he sees this cocoon on the ground, and it's moving and it's struggling, and he's watching it, and he starts feeling bad for what's inside. Right, so he goes into the house. He grabs a tiny pair of scissors. He comes back out. He gets on one knee and as slowly and gently as he possibly can, he slowly cuts open the cocoon, freeing this butterfly. He sits back down with his cup of coffee. He's feeling really good about himself. And as he continues to observe that butterfly throughout the morning, it's struggling and it actually ends up dying. Well, why? Because the old man, he took away the productive struggle that it took the butterfly to build the strength in its wings of breaking out of the cocoon
Mm.
so that it could fly. We get so many moments to strengthen us throughout our lives. And I think a lot of times as parents, we want to be cocoon cutters. we want to make it easier. We want to open that and we want to cut the cocoon and what we end up doing is we don't allow our kids to strengthen themselves to be able to fly one day. And I think that simple story is huge. And I think about it a lot. I got an 11-year-old at home. I remember when he was first going to preschool, and we need winter jackets up here in Wisconsin. And he's in our mud room and he's struggling trying to zip up his jacket. And what do I want to do? I just want to go and zip it up for him because he's crying, he's frustrated. But in the back of my head, I'm like, don't be a cocoon cutter. Otherwise, he's going to be that 7th grader that can't zip up his jacket, right? So I know it's a really simple example, but that was one of my biggest challenges that I told our parents is don't be a cocoon cutter. So if your kid is struggling, have him come talk to his position coach. Have him come talk to us. Communication's a great skill. But if you're the one picking up the phone, you're removing that uncomfortable conversation, and now you're robbing him of that experience. And it was cool because, and then we had a bunch of players that would say to their own parents, hey, Mom, stop being a cocoon cutter. Dad, you're being a cocoon cutter. Let me handle it.
I love the
See, do
power
you
of
find
stories.
yourself like an occupational hazard preaching to your wife about this stuff? Or
If you say cocoon one more time, there's going to be a problem, mister.
Exactly.
Well, we got to remind
I don't want to hear the
ourselves.
cocoon. Okay, he's going to get hit by a car.
Obviously, there's different levels.
That's the
to
best
this,
question of the whole podcast right there.
Yeah. I'll be honest, we got to remind ourselves because I think as parents, none of us want to see our kids struggle. We don't. It's inherent in us, and we love our kids, and we want to jump in. So we got to hold each other. My wife and I got to hold each other accountable to it, and this is good. Like this struggle is good. And I don't want to speak for you guys, but a reason I get this opportunity to be on this call is because I've had struggle. I am who I am because of my situation growing up,
Yeah.
not only my dad, but, I remember like we did not do well financially for a long time with my mom. And we were like, there was a lot of things that we struggled with that gave me this perspective and the strength I have today. So, I do think it's important to really step back and try to allow our kids to strengthen those wings.
Do you look at that as a gift or a burden now? This is like so much of this to me is about perspective. My first wife passed away, and I'm so grateful that I had a wonderful marriage with her. I really am. I'm grateful. But I could be really pissed and sad all the time about it. And I've just chosen to be like, wow, who gets to have that? What about you and your dad? I mean, was there a moment where you went from being annoyed or angry to like, okay, hold on a second, or were you just genetically always like, well, whatever, I'll do the best I can? How do you flip that switch? Any coaching on that, Coach?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I'm sorry, to hear about, your wife. And I do think that our perspective drives our performance, and how we view things is how we do things. There are a lot of things we can control in our life, but our perspective is something we can control. So how you just framed that, I think, was really powerful, Mike, of the blessing that you had with her, and what a gift that was, because it'd be easy to shift that perspective to, the other side of that, of now that she's gone and the anger, but you have the gratitude because you choose to look at it that way.
Hmm.
As far as my journey with my dad, I was angry for a long time, for the majority of my teens and early 20s. Um, I, I'll share this story. I don't know how often I've ever shared this. Never on a podcast, that's for sure, or out in public. But my dad ended up having a severe stroke where he was on life support,
Hmm.
and my brothers and sister were in the waiting room, and we all took individual turns to go in before we unplugged the machine, so to speak. And for some reason, I took my time with him to forgive him.
Hmm.
And I don't know if he could hear me. Still to this day, don't know if he could hear me. But what I realized was I was not forgiving him for him. I was forgiving him for me.
Yeah.
And maybe some people in here are like, yeah, no crap, dummy. But I held on to that for a long time. And I did not forgive him because I didn't want him off the hook. And when I had that conversation, I left that day, I was like, I feel more free than I felt in a long time,
Mm,
So I don't know, I'll butcher it, but there's an old proverb of like, you know, by holding on to burning coal, you only burn yourself, right? And I think like I held on to that for a long time, and in the end, it was only hurting me. So I think forgiveness is sometimes uh, underrated in this world, and it doesn't mean that you got to forgive and let people back in your life and continue the cycle of abuse, but you can forgive and still have boundaries. And if I look back, I wish I would have done that a lot earlier because I think I would have been a freer person in my teens and my 20s.
mm,
That's such a thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
That was a real gift, and you gave yourself a gift that day. I think that my biggest lesson going through all that was that I felt like a really bad dad and friend and business leader while all that was going on with Ruth. And finally just had to think, I'm doing the best I can. This is as good as I can do right now. And the lesson for me was to be graceful with others. You have to be graceful with yourself. Like
Mm,
life is really messy. So thank you for sharing that story. That's, I think that's probably fundamental to why you're so good with kids and young men and as a leader because you have that well-earned empathy, like
mm.
that. What a journey. um so
Thank
you win 70. I'm gonna lighten it up for a second because I was crying a second ago. So you won 68 in a row, 69 in a row. 70. At any moment where you're just like, okay, we got to lose one of these games. This is too much to carry. That must have been really hard to be winning all the time because my team, Iowa State University, just lost. I've got Kansas on Saturday. And part of me is like, well, they need to lose because it creates humility because the
Mhm.
tournament's coming and you can't slack it. You got to work harder. Now, I know you've worked with Iowa State University. So what you're about to say is rooted in that experience. What do you tell people that are so used to winning? How do you keep motivating them? I mean, because you learn lessons when you lose and you learn lessons when you win. That was a long question.
Mhm.
Take any part of it you want.
Yeah. It was a great question. And, I think it was that 70 game win streak was a blessing and a curse. Like there was a lot of really good memories. There's no doubt, but it was miserable at times, if I'm being honest with you, for a lot of different reasons. One, when you experience a lot of success, sometimes you don't win good enough for people. It's really interesting, right? I remember our defensive coordinator telling me that, he was one of the hardest workers I've ever met. He was at, Saturday morning, 5 a.m. at the gas station filling up his pump, and there was a community member next to him and said, "Hey, yeah, you coach for the football team, right?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you guys didn't look that good last night." And we
Yeah.
won like 42 to
We
14.
won.
Yeah, it was like 42-14. And like the 14 points we gave up was late in the game when we, had some subs in. And like, so there is this external noise that can really get to you. So we really tried to focus on the internal. And that was probably one of the best things we did is we had our own internal scoreboard. We had our internal focus. And there was a quote that we use all the time that it's not the water around a ship that will sink it. It's when water gets inside. And there's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of people
Mm,
that focus on the outside waters. In business, it's market conditions, tariffs, competition. And none of those things typically sink your ship. It's when you allow other things inside. So I would
mm,
always have our leaders at the beginning of the year say, come up with a list of what
mm,
are the things that we're not going to allow inside of our ship. And some of those things were like entitlement, complacency, ego, negativity. And I'd start off every meeting with that list. I'll say, how's the ship? And then I would tell our leaders, hey, a lot of those things happen when I'm not around. So do you have the courage to hold each other accountable when those things start creeping into our ship? So we found like our own internal scoreboard. We found ways to grow, even through the wins. And the last thing I'll share with you that I think we really did a good job of during that time is we focused on what we just talked about as far as perspective. And I would always tell our kids, pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
Where would you rather be 65 and 0 or 0 and 65?
Yeah.
Right. And really trying to make sure that we understood the difference between pressure and stress, defining words matter, embracing the pressure, using stress relief mechanism to make sure that we're not getting burnt out. So there's a lot of things we did, but I think the biggest thing we can do is focus on things we can control inside of our ship.
I
Right.
love the analogy, honestly, and
I do
especially
too.
right now because like there are a lot of outside things that are happening with the market, and AI honestly is totally just disrupting our environment. And I think we're making the most of it, but there is noise. There is a lot of noise, and if you let it, it could just it just encapsulates you, and like that's all
Mhm.
you focus on then is the noise instead of looking internally and what you can do. So I love that. That's a really good one.
And I think that it's healthy. Something just as a callback, what I see is um, everybody needs a place where they can talk about, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, and how they're doing. The coaching staff, the kids, executives, having a room where you can be like, hey, man, I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer.
Mm,
What are we going to do? Like, come on, like that, the best CEOs I know are able to say, look, I'm doing the best I can here. This is what I think we should do. What do you think? What am I missing? What's the blind spot? Because I'm scared too. Like I'm scared too. When you can say that, the steam that is let go, and I think, well, you said it earlier. Syndrome doesn't stop when you get the bigger job, the bigger paycheck, the bigger title. It's in a lot of it can amplify. It can become bigger and bigger, and blowing off that steam, whoever you are, I think is really critical.
yeah,
Um,
Steve, that do you get into that at all? Like in terms of thinking about like vulnerability and um, helping create that trust within a team. If you're fearful in a way, like you can't be vulnerable, and then that does erode trust, I think, in a lot of cases. I don't is there a connection there, do you think?
yeah,
Yeah, so you bring up that word trust. I think that's huge, and we actually we have a system. We have a 360 assessment around the skills of trust. I think there's some people that think, well, they're just naturally a trust builder, or
Mm,
they're really good at building trust, and we just feel like there's skills. And I'll just quickly go through it. We shape it like a pyramid, and the foundation, the first level of that pyramid is authentic vulnerability.
yeah,
So showing up and having the courage to be your authentic self, as Mike just described, of I don't need to have all the answers, right? I can be my authentic self. And then the vulnerability aspect we define in two ways. One, sharing with the purpose of connecting, not for pity, but for connection,
mm,
right? And then the other way we
good,
define vulnerability is having the courage to go toe to toe with the twin thieves. Because for you to step into the fear of failure, right? The fear of judgment. That is one of that's vulnerability at its highest peak. So, do we have the authentic vulnerability? Because courage is contagious, and as leaders, if we can step in, we give permission for other people to do the same. Then the next level is there's two buckets to it. There's care, because people won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So, how are you showing people you care? By listening, by being present, by asking questions, by having empathy. And then the other bucket of that is credibility, right? And that is helping people become successful. You got to be able to be really good at what you do, right? And
yeah,
help people move the needle.
yeah,
And then the highest, the tip of it is just around consistency, that people can know how you're showing up, that you're going to do it consistently, because the best of the best do consistently what other people do occasionally, right? So can you be that consistent person? But you put those four buckets, and we have skills in each bucket together. What it ends up doing is it helps systematically build trust with the people that you have the privilege to lead, work with, coach, and it helps them then do it with other people as well.
yeah. So coaching is
good.
one thing. Have you ever walked into a room and or met with an executive team and come back and eventually said this person has to go? Like, is
Mhm.
there a type of person where you're just like, we don't have time for this. This person has to go. And
Yeah.
what does that person look like if you've met them?
Oh, yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to what that person looks like. I think it depends on, the role, the position, their character, the values of that organization. But there's definitely people in every organization, and, unfortunately in our football program, that just continually did not live out the values and the standards and the expectations of their role. And I think it's Brene Brown that says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind.
Yeah.
And caring and loving people means that you're direct with them. And it also gives them an opportunity to go and be in a place where maybe they fit a little bit better.
Mm.
I'm not going to pretend like it's easy. It was the toughest thing as a coach. It's the toughest thing, like for me, is to tell people that they're not a right fit. Uh, don't get me wrong, but that is part of the process of making sure that we're doing what's best for the team, but also the best for that individual. Maybe what's best for that individual is they're not there. And the last thing I will say when I think about those conversations, one question I would ask myself all the time is, what's more important, my level of comfort or the success of our team?
Yeah.
Mm.
And when I avoided those conversations, it was because my level of comfort was more important than the success of our team.
Yeah.
And when I leaned into it, I had the perspective of, this might be uncomfortable, but this is best for our team.
Yeah. For
Steve,
the good of the
Mike,
whole.
Mike
Yeah.
is going to jump into some rapid fire in a little bit. Right now, like currently, since looks like 2022, um, you've started your own partnership to do, like, I assume some of it's speaking, some of it's this leadership development. Can you just talk a little bit about that from like the business standpoint? And you might talked about that being a tough decision before for you to
Mhm.
leave coaching, but maybe just give us and the audience a little view of what you're doing today.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. So, our organization is Jaden Jones. So it's Lucas Jaden, my business partner, Jones, my last name, and really, big three that we offer is coaching, one-on-one executive coaching, and business coaching. And so we have multiple partners that we do deep work with over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. So the coaching aspect of it, and then the live events part is big for us too. So we do keynotes and workshops, and then we also try to create community. So
Hmm.
we also have some mastermind groups and things like that. So it in all those different facets, we focus in on three things: it's leadership development, it's cultural growth, and it's mindset. And we call it three-legged stool. And if you're an organization and you have a systematic way of developing your leaders, you have a culture that's by design and not by default, and you have strong mental skill principles that you can lean into, you're going to be successful. Because I think leadership and culture is really easy when things are going well. But when adversity hits, you need some common language and principles you can lean into. So that's why we call it kind of the three-legged stool. So appreciate you asking, John.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, John, because now I have a referral for Steve. I'm a part-time pimp, Steve, connecting people and possibilities, how I roll. So I have a connection for
Mike
you.
is amazing at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. All right. So rapid fire questions. You ready, Steve? Watching the
Yes,
clock, Navy brat. You got another meeting. Let's make this happen. You ready?
I'll do my
Um,
best.
talent or toughness?
Toughness.
Hardest kid to coach?
Mm.
Know it all instead of a learn it all.
Ah,
Knower versus learner. Love
hardest
it.
parent to deal with?
Um, the former high school all conference player that thinks they know it all.
Who wants to bore you again with the story of the championship game? One word that defines leadership.
Love.
Ah,
That's awesome.
good.
Most overrated trait in leaders. Overrated.
Um, that's a great question.
Mm.
I know it's supposed to be rapid fire. Technical skills.
Great. Underrated trait. Most underrated.
Is that what you asked me before? I thought
No,
technical
this is
skills.
my
No.
follow-up question. You said
Yeah.
Oh,
overrated. Now I want to know what's
yeah,
the most
underrated.
underrated
Most
trait?
underrated is the ability to listen.
Mm.
I'm sorry. All right. One thing every dad should stop doing.
Hmm. Cutting the cocoon.
Yeah.
Good callback. One thing every CEO should start doing.
Um, Setting up systematic ways to know the person behind the uniform.
Love that. Discipline or inspiration?
Discipline.
Really? So I think you're pretty good at inspiration. I'm just saying. So I believe you.
Thank you.
But
Hmm.
okay. And What would your 17-year-old angry, pissed off at his dad think of today's you?
I think he'd be proud.
Yeah,
You
I think
should
you're
be.
right. Steve,
You
thank you
should
so
be.
much. What a great time. Thank you for, I want to personally thank you for making me cry and for, you know, sharing some things that were deeply personal. I'm grateful. And I think that I'm speaking for thousands of young men who have been touched by you, who are also grateful for your rare form of mojo. Appreciate you.
Tons of great nuggets in there, Steve. Really, thank you. Really appreciate meeting you and being on the podcast. Thank you.
Feelings mutual. This is a great conversation. Appreciate what you guys are doing and look forward to continue to build a relationship with you guys.